Who the fuck wears a Hawaiian shirt on Christmas Eve in New York City? He should be dead.
Greetings, audio Avengers. Welcome to the Marvelous TV Club, your headquarters for insightful and entertaining discussions of the latest episode of Marvel Television. Hawkeye is a wrap, and there's a lot to discuss from the explosive, maybe somewhat controversial finale. Now, there are a lot of podcasts that talk about Marvel TV, but what separates the Marvelous TV Club from the pack is the way we creatively structure our conversations. Last week on Storycast, we discussed the themes of the penultimate episode, which is usually where the arc of the series comes into focus. And now, the finale has given us all the resolutions and fallouts for our characters within that arc. So, how better to tackle that than through our character cast, where we break down what we loved most and least about the fates of our faves. I'm your multi-hyphenate host, producer, editor, social media maven, and more, Marc Faletti. And as always on Character Cast, I'm joined by the MCU's finest judges of characters. First, Kristine Kippins. Hi, Kristine.
Hey, Mark.
And of course, second to none, Jesse Taylor. Hey, Jesse.
Technically, I am second to Kristine, but other than that, you're right.
It's participation trophies all around. I'm just really glad to talk to both of you about this. And speaking of participation trophies, credit to Hawkeye for having the guts to follow up Spider-Man No Way Home. If I can't think of anything that would be like a more difficult job than like the ultimate fan service movie that somehow actually delivered on all the goods. Look, I'm just going to say there might be some spoilers here in the next couple seconds about Spider-Man, so jump ahead 30 seconds in a minute. If you haven't seen it for some reason, what a difficult job, right, Jesse? Like to come after No Way Home?
Well, especially to have what's a smaller story, even with the sheer number of people we had in this episode. Hawkeye's a smaller story than Spider-Man No Way Home. And to even have like a little bit of a tie-in last week. And then to realize that the ending of No Way Home, other than the fight at the Statue of Liberty, spoiler, but other than the fight at the Statue of Liberty, based on the ending of the movie, it actually makes complete sense that nobody would be responding to what happened because nobody would know who Spider-Man was.
Yeah. And there's some evidence that these are really concurrent because of the reference to Statue of Liberty that we got in Hawkeye, right?
And it's Christmas. It's Christmas in both the movie and the TV show.
Oh, that's right. Yeah, damn. They really do overlap. What did you think, Kristine? Did that affect your observations as you were taking in Hawkeye? Or are you able to put up those barriers and watch everything on its own terms?
No, I was able to separate it. I mean, first of all, I saw Spider-Man Thursday, 4:00 in the afternoon, like the earliest possible showing that I could see it without being a total insider. That's when I saw it. So I saw Hawkeye the day before. It had that alley-oop with the, I want to go see the new and improved Statue of Liberty. And then I saw the new and improved Statue of Liberty the next day, and I thought it was so cute. But then I've had basically a week since I've seen Spider-Man. So I was fresh and ready for Hawkeye and able to separate the two of them.
Yeah, I dragged down the group chat between the three of us by waiting till Saturday to see it. It was just like, by then you guys were like way past where I was at. I was like, Magic Ned! And you guys are just, I could feel the eye rolls on the other side.
Yeah. We had a side chat.
I figured that's the responsible move. I appreciate you guys doing that. But look, today I want to take us through the finale in 3 segments. First, we're going to talk about our overall assessment of the episode and its place in the MCU, and the MCU itself a little bit. And then we'll talk about the arcs of our major characters, Clint, Kate, Maya, Yelena, and Eleanor. And then finally, we will discuss the fates of our most interesting supporting characters. There may also be a little surprise at the end. We'll see. But let's start with the big picture of the episode, the series, and the MCU itself. I would like to play a little bit of a game called True or False. It's not really a game because I don't really know how you win. We're back to the participation trophy thing, I guess. But I'd like to pose a statement to you guys, and then you can tell me if, for you, the statement is true or false. Jesse, we're going to begin with you with the following statement. And as I'm about to say this, I realize writing it down is different than saying it out loud, because the statement is, I enjoyed the finale. Which is not to say, Jesse, I'm asking you to say if I enjoyed the finale. I'm saying if you were to say that statement, is that true or false? Jesse, did you enjoy the finale? True.
Okay.
True or false? I'm already off the rails.
You have two lawyers on this podcast, and that was the most lawyer-ass introduction to this question possible.
You guys
I
have broken me.
appreciate it.
I blame you guys.
So I watched it a second time. We've talked about this today, and I'll say I was on the border of false. Now I'm kind of over into true.
Okay.
And I think the second watch was necessary just to sort of get over the flood of things that happened in this episode. We'll talk about this in a little bit, but the hardest part about every MCU finale is that they set up so many things, and then it always feels like the finale is like Kevin Feige or Disney or somebody coming in and saying, like, you got to set up this, 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 and this. And so in this episode, we had to set up Echo. We had to set up Kate and Hawkeye's future. We had to resolve Hawkeye and Yelena. We had to figure out what happens with the Eleanor. We had to have Jack come back. We had to figure out what happens with the LARPers. And at a certain point, it just felt like there was so much going on. And I think it was intentional. But at a certain point, you're like, just calm down. Like, give us more. Have a second season. Resolve some stuff in Echo. That's okay. But you're just like, okay, well, now they're back. The LARPers have new costumes. There's 5,000 tracksuit bros. Like, you know, just give me a second to breathe. And actually, with a show that spent 5 episodes, giving everybody room to breathe. And that's what was so good about it, is that some of the best scenes of the show were just them being them and watching the characters interact with each other. This episode was the exact opposite of that. So I enjoyed it, but I think ultimately my true comes from the fact that the show has built up so much goodwill and interest along the way that I liked seeing it resolve, even if it wasn't the way that I would have wanted to see it executed.
I think the one scene that still spoke to the great pacing that the first 5 episodes had was with Kate and Yelena in the elevator, right? That was a little bit more of what you're talking about, where we were watching them go down and they were, you know, having moments with each other, and it wasn't just sort of rushing us through that. So I did, that scene stood out because it really called back to the pacing of the first 5 episodes. Kristine, what did you think?
I mean, I agree with everything that Jesse said, especially the power of the second watch, because the easy answer for this question for me was false. False. But even on the second watch, I think I'm still in the false category, but only just so. I didn't hate it. But I can't say, like, I thoroughly enjoyed it like I did episode 5. Episode 5 was amazing, you know? But for me, this was a very meh experience. In addition to the things that Jesse called to, I really would have enjoyed some sort of conclusion or further thinking on Kate's part after that conversation she had with Yelena at the dinner table, where she was like, you really need to think about Clint. And Kate basically told her the same thing, but Yelena was the only one that was like, maybe I should think about him and who hired me to kill this man that this little girl loves so freaking much. So to me, Yelena was the only one who grew from that conversation. But speaking of Yelena, I also felt that she was holding back quite a bit in this episode until she got to Clint. And that was something that I've been wrestling with. It might be more of her just playing with Kate. But at the same time, I would think if Kate is getting in between her and Clint, she'd be a bit more forceful. But then at the same time, she might be like, I can handle this little girl. I could just... So I keep going back and forth on whether or not that makes any sense. But, you know, the other issue I had was feeling like Kingpin was totally underutilized in this episode as well, which keeps making me think this could have been greater than it was. And this is super petty, super, super, super petty. But this is an issue that is like deep in my soul with this episode. Everyone kept touching their earpieces when they spoke, and it drove me absolutely crazy. Like, y'all know when you're doing this covert type of mission, you don't press the earpiece when you speak, and even Clint did it. This seasoned spook pressed his earpiece when he was speaking to folks, and I was like, who was directing this? who was directing this? The LARPers? Fine. But Clint should have said, stop touching your earpiece. You look like a dick. Like somebody has said that before. Clint needed to say it in this episode. And I was furious that it didn't happen. It's petty. It's super petty. But I'm the queen of pettiness, so I had to bring it.
No, I mean, as far back as like James Bond, Casino Royale, like Daniel Craig's first movie, they were making jokes in movies about touching the earpiece. And I must be like an actor's school, like when you're up there and you're on stage and you're doing that thing where you have to act without, essentially any props or anything. It must just be some reflexive action that every actor has gone through something, because it's just so over the top to do that. And yeah, it's a good little distracting moment. For me, the moment that threw me off came right away, which was when Clint was just like, we're partners now. And that was not something I think they'd established. However, I think there's something to that on a second watch that I'll get into in a bit. What I'll say about this finale is I enjoyed it. I probably had the most fun of this group. I think partly because Kristine sent me a cryptic message that will be our next true or false statement that kind of changed my expectations a little bit, that, hey, maybe we're not just going to like sail into a perfect finale for a change. But what I'll say is I think it works better as a final chapter of a whole than as a standalone episode. And that is something I think Marvel needs to reckon with a little bit. So let's move to that next true or false statement. Kristine, we'll begin with you because you sent this to me. So I guess that's probably a spoiler as to where you land. But I want to hear more because I kind of waited until we were talking now to get the information. But something you texted me, I think before 8 a.m. today, was it feels like one person wrote episodes 1 to 5 and someone else wrote episode 6. Is that a true or false statement for you, Kristine?
So I have to say it's true because, duh, I said it. But what triggered me in saying this is the exact same thing that you just brought up, Mark. As soon as Clint said, Kate, you're my partner, I was like, what show am I watching? When did this happen? Did I miss an episode? Is this actually episode 7? What transpired? This seems so strange. And then later on in the episode, he said something along the lines of heroes make tough decisions. And I'm like, that doesn't sound like Clint at all. When has Clint ever considered himself a hero to be the expert on this type of subject? He basically called himself a hero to Kate. And he has, in every episode of this show, said the complete opposite. And Yelena was scary and threatening in episode 5, and she seemed like a shadow of herself in episode 6. Everyone other than Kate seemed to be speaking differently to me. But that was this morning, seeing it first off. And then I decided, let me watch episode 4 and 5 and 6. And then I felt a little differently.
So what did you think about that rewatch that made that tweak for you? Because that's kind of where I landed too, but I want to hear what you think.
It flowed a little bit better. I think I had more plot issues than I had screenplay issues, than I had actual conversation issues. There was something about the first watch where no one sounded like themselves other than Kate.
Mm-hmm.
Even Eleanor sounded a little bit off. But then once I rewatched, it might have been my expectations playing a little bit as well in making me think that it felt like there was a different writer on 6, to the point where I went to IMDb and I was like, who was on 4? Who was on 5? Who was on 6? I was like, is this actually true? But there was something about watching 4, 5, and 6 concurrently that made me walk back from the statement a bit.
Well, I looked up who wrote this episode, and then I looked up who wrote all the episodes. And so one of the things I'll say, and I think this has been kind of a common take on these shows, is that of the first 5 episodes, most people would say 1 and 2 were the weakest, and 3, 4, and 5 were the strongest. And episode 6 was co-written by the writers of 1 and 2. And so what it really felt like is that the show was supposed to develop in a certain way. And so you had somebody write the beginning and the end, and then you had other writers come in and write the middle. And like an Oreo, the middle is so sugary and creamy and delicious. And then you kind of get to the end and you're like, well, that's part of an Oreo. It's still good, but it's not quite the same. And So it really did feel like there was a way that the writers of the sort of end pieces envisioned the show running. And then you had people come in the middle and do some really good stuff in the play between those episodes. And so kind of 6 had to get back to where they envisioned it originally going. And that's why so much of it felt abrupt. It's like, we need to have Clint reach this realization. But the fact that he starts off the episode with it, there's not even a beat when he says we're partners.
Mm-hmm.
And that was the biggest thing.
Mhm.
Even a 2 or 3 second delay where he's just looking and thinking and realizing the import of what he's about to say. Instead, it's just straight out like, Yelena sent me this plot point. It's on my phone. Look at my mom admitting to everything. And then immediately, we're partners. Let's go deal with this. It just felt way too pat. It felt like they just needed to get to that development point so they could make the show go in the direction they wanted it to.
Yeah, this is what I call the Civil War problem. And I don't know if you guys feel the same way about where Cap landed in Civil War, but my problem with Civil War was fundamentally that the guy I saw at the beginning of Winter Soldier was all rules and transparency, right? That's when he's talking to Nick Fury about the helicarriers and doing this project in secret, and he's all about good governance. That's his whole spiel. And I liked Cap in that movie as a model of the idea of like better governance, just governance, transparent governance. But in Civil War, all of a sudden, he's the guy who's like, whoa, rules for me? I don't know. I'm mostly talking about other people, I guess. And that always threw me off. But I came to understand on the rewatches that after Winter Soldier, as a result of Winter Soldier, right, Cap became more cynical and mistrusting of bureaucracy because it could be exploited to the extent that you got Zola hiding out in plain sight, basically in S.H.I.E.L.D. and all the other Hydra stuff that came out of that. But they don't show us that transition. We get Cap in one mode, and then he goes through a movie, and then he's just in another mode at the beginning of the next movie. And I think this episode had the exact same issue, which is that Clint turned based on that information from Yelena, but they did not give us that scene. And I think if episode 5 had ended the way that you're describing, Jesse, which is basically he looks at the footage, he looks back to Kate, he looks back at the footage, back to Kate, you know, and then he sets his jaw because he's realizing like this shit is not ever going to end. And maybe he even says something to that. Like, there's no way back now. Okay, partner, let's suit up. And that's the end of 5. Then all of a sudden we're in the right mindset for 6, right? Because we would have seen the transition the way you're describing it. And it would have prepped us for the fact that Clint's on board now because basically Kate's in so deep that there's no other way for him to be other than to just like stop running from this and embrace her and bring her in. Jesse, I've got another true or false for you. This time, I just want to put this out and see where you land. True or false, we set ourselves up for disappointment with characters like Eleanor and Jack the same way we did with Dottie and not Quicksilver in WandaVision.
That's a hard one, but I'll say false. And the reason I'll say false is because we've been through multiple MCU shows now. And we did the theorizing with Dottie and not Quicksilver. We did the theorizing with Loki and the TVA and who's actually behind it and who Sylvie is, et cetera, et cetera. So we've done this multiple times. And by the time we got to this episode, it's like, okay, you're thinking about who Eleanor and Jack could be. You're thinking about what their impact might be. But I wasn't as... I don't want to use the word invested, but I wasn't approaching them in the same way. I wasn't approaching them like, okay, one of these is going to be the big bad. One of these is going to be, you know, something mind blowing is going to happen. You generally know something bad is going on with each of them. The problem I had with Eleanor and Jack in this episode is that once Kingpin shows up, he just pushes them out of the picture altogether. We have 5 episodes where you're like, what's going on with these people? And then all of a sudden, Jack is like, again, arrested at the end of episode 5. Episode 6, he's on like rich dude bail. And he's just at a party with a sword. Like after getting arrested for murdering somebody with a sword, potentially. And then you have Eleanor, who's like, again, being set up. She's got secrets. She's got plans. She's got ploys. Like we don't know exactly how deep she is, what her intentions are or anything. And then we just get exposition. And then by the end of the episode, like the idea that Eleanor who set up her fiance to get arrested, at the end of the episode looks at Kate and says, "Oh, is this how you spend the holidays? Having your parent arrested? Is that what a hero does?" And it's like, yes, that's exactly what you did. Who are you to complain? Like, and we just never come back to that. And then when Clint is sitting with Kate in the ambulance, which again, I did love that as an homage to like 90s movies. Like every single 90s action movie ends with the heroes sitting in the ambulance talking to each other, decompressing and breaking it down. But Clint literally, the two things that happen, Kate goes head to head with Kingpin, who she's never met, and she sees her mom arrested and carted off for murder. The only thing Clint mentions is Kingpin. He's like, "You fought the Kingpin. That's pretty awesome." It's like,
yeah.
Your partner's that you're not going to talk about the fact that your mom's going to jail because of something you did. The show kind of went in the opposite direction. Instead of like even trying to give us anything with them, it just sort of set them to the side and said, they're going to play their little parts in this episode, and we might see them later, we might not, but we're not even going to give you enough to really be disappointed with.
I got to agree with Jesse that it's false. You know, I didn't get to participate the last time, unfortunately, because I wasn't feeling that well. So I didn't get to really, you know, dive that much into thinking into what Eleanor can be. But after the first and second episode, I think we were all like, she's bad somehow. We got the color. She's wearing red throughout. There's something shady going on. We don't know how she paid off that debt. Is Derek actually dead? We never saw the body. Did she kill him? Like, we were spiraling a little bit, but we thought she's bad. There's something there. And we were right. There was totally something there. Okay? And I have to say, in terms of Jack, I love the fact that he's this ditzy little man. Like, let this show be about the women and Hawkeye. That's great. I love that. But I feel like there could still be more to Jack. But, you know, he might also have just been traumatized by the attack and was like, I'm going to learn how to fight with a sword now. And 12 years later, he's a badass with a sword.
Yeah, Jack is a lot of fun. I have no complaints about where they took us with Jack. I enjoyed the ride the whole time. Yes. I only want more Jack. I hope he gets his own solo MCU series. I'm on the fence about Eleanor, though, particularly because they did such a good job of dressing her in that cinematically evocative way of like evil and secrets. And she was such a great performer. And I think I did, in fact, set myself up. I read too much into the details and the casting and all of that. And I think I convinced myself that she was going to be, you know, Madame Mask or some other kind of big bad that would be a lot of fun. But yeah, so I think I kind of split the baby on that one and feel like I did kind of set myself up a little to be disappointed. But I also don't think that takes away from your point, Jesse, that they shoved her to the side so that Kate's climactic event was with someone that she'd never met and didn't even know the name of until Clint told her after looking at the video on her phone. Whereas her mom's the one who put out a hit on her frickin' idol. And that was the emotional issue we were all waiting for, you know, resolution on, not, you know, can she blow up the Kingpin with, although admittedly I did like the callback to the flicking of the quarter. That was pretty cool with the cufflink. That was all right.
With the cufflink. Like,
she did him dirty. She got that off him. That's great.
Yeah, I haven't finished all of Daredevil, but the fact that it was a cufflink blew my mind. That was so good.
Yeah. And I was shocked to see that little callback to the Netflix show.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I appreciated that because, you know, this is my next question, Kristine. True or false? Marvel has disdain for past Fox and Netflix properties in a way that it does not for past Sony and Spidey properties.
I mean, well, this is a massive spoiler for Spider-Man No Way Home.
Yeah, again, jump ahead a couple of minutes if you haven't seen it.
Yeah, I'll try not to say too much, but well, listen, I mean, the spoilers are out there, folks. If you've managed to stay spoiler-free and not hear any of the rumors about Spider-Man, well, God bless you. I don't know how you're staying off the internet as well as you are. But yes, there is a full embracing of all of the Sony properties in the Marvel universe now. Like, they have been acknowledged. They are not part of the MCU. They are on totally different universes, but they're real. They are acknowledged, and they could survive another day. But here, we definitely get a different treatment. I mean, there is a question of whether or not they have actually murdered Kingpin. If this is the same Kingpin, is this the same universe as Daredevil? Spider-Man might hint that it is the same universe. God damn it. Can we just do full spoilers? I hate talking around this shit.
Yeah. Let's just do full spoilers. Jump ahead if you haven't seen it.
Charlie shows up, right? So Charlie Murdoch shows up as
Matt Murdock, Charlie Cox.
I nearly called him Tom Holland as Peter Parker's lawyer, right? Which was an amazing scene. So we know that Daredevil and Charlie exist.
Matt. It's Matt. You keep calling him Charlie.
I keep calling him Charlie. Why do I keep calling him Charlie?
Because you love Charlie Cox so much. His name is Charlie Cox. Yeah.
Oh, that's why. Okay, great. Matt Murdock. We've got Matt in the MCU. We've got Kingpin now in the MCU. But I still think it might be unclear whether or not we've got the Netflix Matt and Kingpin. Yes. So there's still that question. So we'll see if they're being treated badly in the way that Kingpin was potentially ended in this episode, and now he's gone, and it's like, will Matt actually be able to make an appearance later on? Will it be the same? I don't know. So I feel true because there has been more love for the Sony properties for a very simple reason. Spider-Man makes money. Listen, Spidey has been selling underoos for longer than the three of us have been alive. Okay? Mm-hmm. He is the moneymaker for Marvel. Every child in the planet that has learned of Spider-Man is obsessed with Spider-Man. Spider-Man makes them money. They are not letting go of Spider-Man anytime soon. And let me tell you, money does not bring about disdain. Okay? So if Spidey's making money for Marvel, they're going to love Spidey.
Well, right now, I just want a set of Vincent D'Onofrio underoos. That's all I want in life.
Yeah, they'll be like puffy so that you feel, like you got
or
that
maybe like
Fisk ass.
Red and white floral print. I'd take those.
Yeah. Super adorable.
Jess is a mess.
Yeah.
So I remember reading about the Netflix shows. I believe it was like a year or so ago. So the Netflix shows were produced and made in conjunction with Marvel, but they were considered their own separate thing. Like they were making up kind of a Netflix universe. They were going to see how well this went, and continue it on as long as it was profitable. As it turned out, really only Daredevil and Jessica Jones took off. Luke Cage did somewhat. Iron Fist was a hot mess.
Hot mess. Good Lord.
The Punisher was, I thought, fantastic, but unfortunately it didn't I think the primary audience, casual audience for the Punisher now are not people who want to watch a complex show about like war trauma and society failing and how cops might actually not be that great. So you've got this set of shows that not only did they kind of fall off on their own merits, but Disney can't put that stuff on Disney Plus. You cannot put Daredevil, any of that, like Wilson Fisk getting his ass beat, or Daredevil going through variety of, everything he goes through. You can't put The Punisher on Disney Plus next to like Home Alone 5 and Moana. And so they've got these characters, these actors who are recognizable, but they need to figure out a way to incorporate them. And as we saw with, I think even you said Fox and Netflix, but even Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., we got confirmation at the end that Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. now officially never happened.
Right.
Or at least one significant portion of it never happened. And it's like, they have to put all of this grist that they have through the mill of Disney so they can make it marketable in the same way that all the other MCU stuff is. And for better or worse, what that means is that we're going to get a Daredevil and a Kingpin who will probably never refer to anything that happened on that show because they can't direct people to go see it and bump up Disney Plus subscriptions. That's
Right.
my conspiracy theory for the day.
No, that's a pretty good one. And look, Sony is still an active partnership. So, of course, they're trying to continue to build and deepen that relationship because they can't make Spider-Man stuff without Sony being involved. And so, of course, they're going to pay some, loyalty or fealty to that. Whereas they own the other stuff outright now. And so they can do whatever they want. And I think it came across with the Ralph Boner stuff. Nobody really seemed to like the way that felt like clowning on X-Men fans. And then, obviously, Kingpin in his goofy shirt getting his ass beat in every scene that he's in the show didn't strike me as the most, respectful way to approach a character that people really loved. Although I will say that shirt comes directly out of the comics from, in fact, a very important arc in which something has happened to Kingpin that may have just happened to him in this show. So teaser for some more stuff we're going to talk about. But yeah, I agree. I think basically this is true. I think Marvel has disdain for those properties. I think they're trying to reference them and get some of the fandom from that interested in their stuff, but they can't stop themselves from, just being a little disrespectful to some very imperfect stuff, to be clear. Like, I don't love any of the X-Men First Class or any of those movies. I might be in the minority on that, but I just don't think a lot of that stuff is very good. I think the Daredevil show had one good season. It's not like stuff that I think deserves a ton of respect, but I think if you're going to try to bring fans on board, I don't know, maybe drop the boner jokes if you want to make friends. But Jesse, my last true or false for us in this segment. True or false, TV-wise, Marvel, the MCU, has a finale problem.
I've gone back and forth on this. I am ultimately going to say false. I think that it's less a finale problem than it is a character development problem. And what I'll say there is that what ultimately got me about this episode is that so much of the first 5 episodes involved Clint reckoning with his past, specifically being Ronin. And then this episode felt like it had just resolved, and I couldn't really understand why or what the resolution was. That he just sort of seemed to be past the problems. Once Kingpin was gone, and once, Eleanor was in the hospital and he made up with Yelena. And even Yelena's problem wasn't with Ronin. It was with the fact that she believed Clint had killed Natasha. Mm-hmm. But they just had a massive fight with the Tracksuit Mafia. Kazi, slips on a banana peel 15 times. And then they're just kind of done with Ronin. And then they burn it in the grill at the end. And with Wanda Vision, we have this huge moral issue that popped up, which is that Wanda took control of an entire town for several days. How long was Wanda Vision in total? It was over a week, right?
Yeah, something like
This is
that.
a while.
Yeah. But she took control of this entire town. She basically enslaved them. And then at the end, it's kind of like, well, they're mad at me. Let's move on. With Falcon and Winter Soldier, because of COVID, you had all these character arcs and you had to jam it into the end. And then with Loki, I think Loki is the show that actually nailed its ending the best because it didn't have to end and it didn't have to resolve the character arc. Loki developed and is going to keep developing in season 2. And so I think it's not necessarily I'm going to revise my answer, that it's not necessarily a finale problem. Actually it is a finale. It's a series finale problem. Season finale, I think, is good. Series finale, not so good. Okay. I've now talked myself in, out, and in, and then back out again in my answer.
That's what we're here for. We're here to actively process the episode. So we're just getting some real-time look inside the brain of one Jesse Taylor. And I'm here for it. I'm here for this trip down processing lane. Kristine, what about you? True or false, Marvel, the MCU, has a finale problem?
I think it's true. I agree with Jesse that Loki is the one exception to this. And I also agree it's because it's setting up season 2. So you've got this amazing cliffhanger, right? But I think the issue is a larger MCU issue, and that's the Act 3 problem.
Mm-hmm.
With the exception of Spider-Man and, this last Spider-Man and a very, very short list of other movies, the Act 3 of the MCU they don't always nail it. They nail everything else, and then sometimes you're just like, they're on fucking rhinoceroses? Really? Like that's how we're ending this film? So I think it's generally a Act 3 issue, and that's exactly what these episode 6s have been. You know, the final episode is just wrapping everything up. It starts off with action from the beginning, almost to the very end. They got to put a bow on everything, and it's just not that great. And that's been pretty consistent, I think, throughout the majority of the MCU. But I want to give some grace here. I think each show, with the exception of Falcon and the Winter Soldier, has done a decent job of setting up some type of cliffhanger, right? There's something still in the MCU to come regarding this character. You know, with Wanda Vision, it's like, what's up with the kids? Are they real? Where are they? Where's that voice? And like, oh my gosh, she's super powerful now. Like, what's she about to do with the Darkhold? And Loki breaking the damn multiverse. Where the hell is that going? And then with this show, we've got Agent 19 set up for something, and is Kingpin actually dead? So we've got, you know, and of course we've got Echo being set up. So they still leave you wanting more, even though you might be a little meh at the end of the episode.
I think what you're saying informs where I land on this, Kristine, which is that, you know, the end of the movie is often considered the weakest part of an MCU thing. It's a CGI battle. It's kind of a half-hour grind. Something Amanda said to me tonight is the climactic battle is actually kind of a denouement in the Marvel universe, because the emotional resolution is done, and then the hero just has to get to the other side of the battle, which we know they're going to do. And there's some dissonance there as we watch a lot of effects play out in something where we're at that point not too worried for most of our heroes. But it works because we can reflect on all the other stuff we loved. The reason I think the MCU has a finale problem on TV is because TV shows are all about the finale. And Kristine, I know you're going to feel me when I say this. Game of Thrones will never recover the heights of its popularity because it could not stick the landing. And without spoiling anything, you know, Succession had a fantastic season finale that pleased most people, despite the fact that it was not kind of what people were expecting. And so everyone's all in. It doesn't matter that there were uneven episodes before that. And so Marvel needs to stop thinking about the finale of their TV shows like the last act of their movies, and they need to start thinking about it as the thing to write towards. That if they don't nail the finale, the show is not going to land with people in a way where they want to rewatch it over and over again. All I'm saying is TV is different than movies, and Marvel needs to learn that the landing is the most important thing. And until they start with that idea, instead of just like, hey, how can we set up future stuff? Though I agree that keeps me interested, it has to stand alone as an episode of great television. And until it does, man, they're going to keep having this problem. So that's why I think they've got a real issue to resolve.
Mark, I feel like your point about where the emotional payoff is in the timing of things is so important. I think that's one of the reasons why Spider-Man is so brilliant. And I know that this is an episode about Hawkeye, and I keep talking about Spider-Man, but the movie is just that freaking good.
Look, it's on all our minds. That's why I was like...
But the emotional payoff is at the very end of the movie. After all the action has occurred, all of the big explosions, you get the emotional gut punch more than once at the very end. And it's one of the many reasons why that film is so brilliant.
And one of the things I'll also point out that I'm now realizing about this episode and sort of how MCU shows are structured is a good series finale for a show, you tend to have minor plot lines fall off earlier. So you start seeing the resolution for like a C tier character 3 or 4 episodes out. Then you get some B tier characters, so that by the end, a good season finale is really focused on whatever central conflict or plot has driven the show. And in the MCU shows, it's universal that they just save everything for the last episode. And so you need to have scene to scene to scene resolution, and you never get to breathe in those moments. And one thing I'll say, and I have a friend of mine who I was working with her when Andrew Garfield's Spider-Man movies came out.
Mm-hmm.
And I did not like those movies. And I remember she told me over and over again, like, you know, you hate those movies. You will say the worst things about those movies. And we've talked about this, but I think maybe my favorite part of Spider-Man No Way Home was Andrew Garfield.
Yes.
Yeah.
I loved sad, nearing middle-aged Spider-Man, not only because he reflects me. I'm not sad, but, you know, that kind of like sense of like age and like... But that, you know, just like the sense of, you know, people, like I know people like that who like had all the promise in the world and like they're just struggling a little bit. And to see him get some resolution through meeting his Spider Bros, like the true bros of the MCU, that was so heartwarming. And then like have the meta read of how he wasn't the favorite Spider-Man and people like shit on his movies as well. And then to see him come back and just play this character where it's like, he found that validation. He found value. Even in the middle of their prep and their fighting and everything, he's like, I'm just as good as the other Spider-Men. Like, not only can't anyone be Spider-Man, but I am Spider-Man. It felt just as good as Into the Spider-Verse for me. And there has never been a moment like that in an MCU show. Because again, there's no room to breathe in an MCU finale.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's such a great point. And I hadn't processed what you were saying either, Kristine, that part of what made No Way Home good is that the payoff finally was at the end. That's so interesting to think about. And hopefully something Marvel will learn about. I appreciate that they keep trying to get better. And that's one of the reasons I stick around for all this fun stuff. You know, it's great. Let's talk about our characters, though, because, you know, as much as we just worked through them as part of these big picture questions, I want to make sure we touch on the five big folks that we have to walk away from this series thinking about. We'll begin with Clint Barton, Kristine. I'd like to know, what was your favorite part of his journey, and was there something that didn't work for you?
Okay, so I have a lot to say about Clint, so buckle up, folks. The way I see it, the show set up Barton to reckon with two things: his past as Ronin and the traumatic event of losing his best friend on Vormir. I think this episode and the show generally did a decent job of handling the latter, but definitely shitting the bed on the former. Okay, so Barton's been triggered throughout the show by memories of Natasha. There was Rogers the Musical, seeing the little girl in the audience dressed as Natasha, Kate's fall off the side of the building being reminiscent of Nat's fall in Vormir, being hunted by a Black Widow assassin that turns out to be Natasha's sister. All of these moments are going to stir up memories and emotions regarding his relationship with Natasha, how her life ended, and the role that he played in that. And he was keeping it all inside, which we know ain't good, right? It's just not good for him. He does not have a therapist to talk about these things with. But I think he started to thaw a little bit at Kate's apartment when, he told her about the shot that he didn't take, which led to Natasha deflecting to S.H.I.E.L.D. and this beautiful relationship that they had. But then he clammed right back up after his encounter with Yelena. And this episode, not only did he get a chance to speak freely about Natasha with Yelena, but he finally stopped blaming himself for her death mid-fight, right? So from my perspective, he just took a lot of the blows that Yelena dealt him, seemingly because he felt he deserved them, right? But by the end, he fights for his life with that whistle call and response, and admitting that Natasha made a choice and there was nothing he was going to be able to do to get in her way. She was too good. And the biggest indicator that he's moving on is the fact that he called Kate his partner, treated her like one, wore that dumbass matching outfit to hers, and then brought her home for Christmas. Not only is that a home, that is a safe house. he hasn't brought anyone home for like funsies except Natasha.
That's
and
true.
I don't think he would have done that for anyone other than Natasha. But as for reckoning with his past as Ronin, that man has yet to take any accountability for that shit. When he was speaking to Maya, he said that the two of them are the same because they're weapons that can be manipulated when they're angry because the rage makes them blind. So is he telling me that his Ronin days are the result of him being manipulated? And he's not owning his choices the way he's arguing that he and Yelena need to accept Natasha's choice to sacrifice herself. And then only Maya and Kate know that Ronin was him. And he threatened Maya with her life if she said anything. So I think Yelena had it right when she said that Clint's primary concern was to protect his reputation here. That's all he cared about. He never publicly admitted for being Ronin, for apologizing for those days. And it was just shitty. Absolutely shitty. And I've got a question for y'all, but I want to hear what Jesse thinks and Mark, what you think about this. But I've got a question about his Ronin days for y'all.
Okay, cool.
So again, what Kristine said was my biggest response after the first time I watched the episode the first time, which is that Clint is a goddamn confessed mass murderer. And not just like a mass murder, like, oh, he committed a mass murder. He did this on the regular for like 5 straight years because he was sad and mad. And there's no consequence for that. Even, all that ever comes of it is that he has to help Kate because people think she's Ronin. And then he gets into a few fights. And again, his climactic face-off with the person who's the most direct representation of everything he did as Ronin. Again, he does this like fucked up parking lot speech to her where it's basically like, guess what? You're just as bad as I am. I know that you didn't go on a 5-year murder spree, but in a way, didn't you? And then he just leaves.
With a threat, as Kristine pointed out, with a super vicious threat hanging over her head.
Right. Now, that aside, the thing that I loved about this show is that, and I loved about Clint, is that we got to see what the real toll of being a superhero is. He doesn't have super soldier serum. He doesn't have, a magic hammer. He doesn't have anything any of the other Avengers have. He just has a bow and arrow and some training. And to see what being an Avenger, what being a spy, what being this covert guy has done in his life, and to watch him come to terms with at least the parts of his life that the show wanted to address, I thought that was fantastic. And like setting the Ronin stuff aside, it made me respect, oddly, both the character and Jeremy Renner more as an actor, precisely because I felt so much of that weight that he was carrying. And the scene that will always stick out in this show to me is when his hearing aid was broken and his son calls and he's trying to fake his way through it. And it's the first time he realizes, I can't do this by myself.
Mm-hmm.
I need Kate's help. You're helping me, and you're helping me with something that is near and dear to my heart, that has value to me. And the people who would help me with this are no longer here. And I thought that was a fantastic moment in the show. But again, you have to balance each of those sides against the other. And it's just always hard to leave the fact that as nice as he is and as charming as he is and as great as the quarter snapping scene was where they become friends, it's like, you kind of got away with something that's worse than any bad guy in this show. And the message is, it's okay. Like, it's okay because you're an Avenger. And is that really what we want to be taking away from this? I'm not sure that was the intent, but it's what we got.
Yeah, Marvel has done a better job than almost any other, or Marvel, the MCU specifically, has done a better job than almost any other like superhero property about trying to make vigilantism not this weird conservative wet dream that Batman, especially the new movie that's coming out, really seems to double down on, this libertarian form of justice, which, by the way, is now being weaponized to take away everything from reproductive rights to who knows what's next. So I think it's really disappointing that Clint doesn't have to pay any penalty, even a personal toll, for being Ronin, and that does, in fact, suck. I'll just say that my favorite part of that made me reconsider Clint was just fleshing out his marriage as a partnership and not some weird 50s style nonsense. Just made me respect him more, that it's like, because I did not love that whole Age of Ultron situation that, and I was just like, he's trapped this family in a farmhouse and they can't escape. And I don't like any of that. So that was just a nice little detail. But Kristine, you have a question for us.
Yeah. So this episode was a bit of a revelation for me. I think 5 and 6 were a revelation for me. What did y'all think Clint was doing during his Ronin days? Did you think he was out there doing these things on his own? Or did you think he was a mercenary for hire? Before watching Hawkeye, what did you think he was doing?
So I got the sense he was out there on his own. He has a very small network of people that he trusts or that he even works with, and they're all gone. I mean, there's really nobody left. There's no system left to guide and direct him. And so it really did feel like he was just out there, he found the Tracksuit Mafia, or he found the Triad, or he found whoever else, and he was just killing until they were gone.
Yeah, I agree. I didn't even occur to me that this guy, Clint, who fancies himself a lone wolf, would have ever answered to anybody. Kristine, do you think they are hinting at the fact that maybe someone like the Contessa was pulling the strings or something?
I mean, he said to Maya, your boss put out a hit on your father. Clint is the one who responded to that hit. So he was a mercenary for hire, which is a thought that never crossed my mind before this show. I thought Clint was out there avenging, mad as hell, and just killing people left and right and just killing bad people. Because that's what we saw Ronin do in Endgame, right? So it never occurred to me that he would do what Yelena is doing now and is a mercenary for hire. He admitted to that, basically, to Maya in the last episode, meaning episode 5, in the previous episode.
Right. Well, and I mean, I think he said that like an informant tipped him off or something. It was vaguer about like whether it was a paid thing, but it still doesn't really make any sense that like an informant tipped him off to what? Like that there's a Tracksuit Mafia? Did he not know about that? And if he didn't, then why did he just decide to kill all of them right away? And if he did know, why it was the tip off that just like there's a boss who works at this fat man's auto shop that's like obviously Kingpin place? I don't know. That whole thing is super vague. I definitely agree with that. But I didn't take that quote to necessarily mean he got paid, just that he got tipped off.
Well, that's interesting. Because when I hear order a hit, I feel like there has to be cash money involved, right? Like,
interesting.
You don't, then it would just strictly be an informant. He wouldn't have then said your boss ordered a hit on your dad. So the informant was the go-between. That's how I took that scene, that the informant was the go-between, but Kingpin wanted her father dead, and that's why it happened the way it did.
Well, the read that I had on it, I thought that Clint was not clear about what happened. I thought that he was talking about two separate things. There was a hit put out, and he found out about it and was targeting them separately. But I think that's also because I was reading Ronin as a lone wolf who wasn't being driven by anybody. So I think the way I processed it was, well, obviously he wasn't the one performing the hit because he was Ronin, and that's not what Ronin does. But then I realized as you're saying this, like, we don't know. Nobody really describes anything Ronin does He's never laid it out, and he's purposely kept it hidden. So yeah, like I had not thought about it in that way.
And Rhodey did say he's a problem. So the thought that I had of that he's just out there killing bad guys, I'm not sure Rhodey would characterize Ronin out there just eliminating Yakuza left and right as a bad thing. But he's like, homeboy's a problem. You need to wrap that up. He's out here doing some wild shit I don't even want you to look at. So I feel like there had to be something more sinister going on here, more bad that he has to take accountability for, and he is skating totally free on.
But maybe we will get that then. Maybe it's burning the suit isn't enough. Maybe you've given us hope for why we didn't get resolution on this, because we were all hung up on that. Maybe that's because there's still more to reveal about Clint as Ronin. I gotta say, I'm not optimistic about that, because the burning of the suit thing is about the tropiest I'm done with this arc as you can get. But you never know. It's the MCU. They're never done with anything. Ask Andrew Garfield. Spoiler alert. Oh, man. Yeah. What are you going to do? We got to move on, you guys, because we've got so much to keep talking about. Jesse, I'm going to turn to you now. Let's talk about Kate Bishop. What was your favorite part of her character journey? And was there anything that didn't work for you?
So I'll be quick with this because they kind of go together. What I liked about her character journey was realizing that there was more to the world than her fixations and fascinations. She kind of this very simplistic view of, Hawkeye's a hero. I want to be like Hawkeye. I'm going to learn everything. I'll be the world's greatest archer. He'll accept me as his friend, and life is going to be great. And she learned that everything's a little bit more complicated. There's shades of gray. Things are more difficult. But along with that, watching this episode the second time, I realized, was she ever actually wrong or have any real setback during the course of this series? Because at every turn, she ends up convincing Clint that he's her partner. She's right about her mom and sends her mom to jail. She makes friends everywhere she goes. She gets everything she wants. She gets invited to the safe house. The only other people who've been there are Avengers, S.H.I.E.L.D. members, and Hawkeye's family. And it's just like, where is the point where she has that character growth? She kind of comes in and leaves. And it's like the real journey was the friends she made along the way.
That's exactly it. Jesse, that is exactly it. I didn't see any growth in Kate whatsoever. She stayed the same. Hawkeye taught her some fancy stuff like the coin toss and prioritizing a quick exit over a quick entrance. But other than that, I didn't see any growth. She's still rash, stubborn, overconfident, and chatty. She never had a humbling moment. There was never any indication that she wouldn't turn her mom in for criming, for it to be of a growth moment for her to call the cops. And I have to say, y'all, that is such a shitty thing to do. Like, I understand her mom did bad things. Her mom murdered Armand and set up her fiance, but that's your mom. You don't turn your mom over to the fucking cops no matter what she did. Because my mom straight up told me when I was younger, if you murder someone, you tell me. And we will work that shit out together. My mother would lie and cover for my ass if I murdered somebody. I'm not going to then go straight to the cops and then lock that woman up. Her mother, lots of issues with Eleanor, but protected the hell out of her daughter.
I can't wait until this episode is on the Dateline about Kristine.
Yeah, there's a lot to unpack from that one. What I guess I would say to that is if your mom tried to kill that which you most loved in the world, I think that you might, I don't know if your mom doesn't sound like the kind of mom who would do that, but Eleanor tried to kill Clint, and there's nothing Kate loves in the world more than Clint. So I kind of understand why Kate was like, you are a bad person. I'm side with Kate on this. You got to turn your mom in on that shit. I think
your mom.
I don't really hesitate. Yeah,
your mom.
Yeah,
y'all. Listen.
I'm not a fan of carceral justice, but Eleanor's got a lot of red in that ledger, and She's hiring people to kill Avengers. I think you gotta slow that shit down.
More red than Clint? More red than Ronin?
Well, that's a good question.
Who she knew was Ronin and didn't turn his ass in. She turned in her mom. I have a problem with that.
Yeah.
But let me just say that the one thing I think was great about her journey was that she was running point by the end, right? So she's giving orders to the LARPer. She saved Clint, but realized there's, a lot of stuff going on that still needs to be happening. So she left him to deal with Yelena while she dealt with her mom and Kingpin and everything else. And she took on Kingpin and lived to tell the tale. So I feel like she graduated in this episode, which I think is positive. But I would have liked to see her experience a setback or two as a teaching moment. And there wasn't one.
Next on the list of characters, we got to talk about Kristine. What was your favorite part of Maya's journey? And was there anything about her journey that didn't work for you?
I didn't see any growth in Maya either, to be honest. So she got this information that got her thinking, I need to ask some questions and see if, what Ronin said is true. And maybe that does show some growth, that she was like, all right, let me not murder this man. Let me actually take in this information, check it out. Oh, Kazi is super shady. There must be some truth to this. And she kind of lets go of her anger towards him and realizes the real person that she needs to direct her anger towards, which is great. But I feel like there wasn't much else beyond that. So I'm glad that she was able to grow and take in that information, but not sure there was anything else there, unfortunately. Jesse, what did you think?
I love the scenes in her childhood because you got to see her build a relationship. You got to see sort of the struggles. You got to see what made her her. And then we get to adult her, and she is static and she is frozen. And I would have even loved one light scene where we see her doing anything that's not running a criminal organization. Just read a book or watch a TV show or go get a taco. Like just anything about her that would have made her more than Echo. And we didn't get that. And again, for a show that spent so much time reveling in its core characters and giving us so much about them, we just got this character who was angry. And then we'll talk about this, I think, near the end. But the scene with her shooting Kingpin is actually taken directly from a Daredevil comic. And the entire purpose of that arc is that she has sort of dedicated herself to the Kingpin as somebody who, kind of saved her when her father died, who had sort of guided her and manipulated her. And she comes to this revelation after really fighting for it and making this decision to turn against the person who had become her surrogate father. And because of the way the Kingpin was introduced and because of the way of what the show gave her and didn't give her, it just felt like it was there. Like it was just, okay, well, she was going to kill somebody. It was just a matter of who. And what the show gave us was the Kingpin because he was just the final person she landed on. It just didn't feel earned in the same way that it would have had it played out longer, or had it been the plot of her own self-titled show instead of giving it all away at the end of Hawkeye for reasons that I still don't quite understand.
Yeah, I mean, I think they set up that Kingpin was the ultimate betrayer who killed her dad, and so I can see how that sort of worked. But also, she kind of stumbles on him in a way that doesn't really feel meaningful. Uh-oh, what do we have happening here? I might have guessed that we would be moving a little faster than we did, but I have a quick end-of-year MTVC aside. We will pause our Hawkeye conversation briefly because we are about to be joined by our StoryCast crew for a quick little end-of-year team-up for the whole gang. Amanda, say hello.
Hi, good to see you, Jesse, Kristine.
Oh, there's Maeve popping in.
Hello, surprise.
Hi. Yeah, we're like exactly halfway through our outline.
Yeah, I did not at all estimate. I maybe really overestimated how much stuff we could get through on a series finale. So we're going to pause in the middle of the episode and probably do some rapid fire responses on some of the stuff we've got left. But I thought we couldn't escape our last episode of the year of the Marvelous TV Club without at least getting the whole gang together for just a couple minutes so that I could say a couple things. One, thank you all so much for doing this. It has been so much fun to take us from the end of WandaVision all the way through all of Falcon and Winter Soldier and then Loki and then a little bit of What If because we had to talk about it kind of. And apparently, based on the trailer we saw for Doctor Strange, it's really going to matter. All the way into this show where we transform things a little bit. And I really appreciate how much you guys rolled with the fact that I just, for workload reasons, needed to change the way we did all of this. So I just wanted to say thank you, first of all. And I wanted to hear a little bit from you guys about kind of what you took away from, watching these Marvel TV shows and kind of what you're looking for in 2022. So we'll pause our Hawkeye discussion for just a second. I promise we won't go too far off the rails. But Amanda, I want to start with you. What did you think was your favorite Marvel show, now that you've seen them all, of this first year of Disney Plus TV?
This is a really hard question for me because I loved them all. But I think, if I am being honest, it was Loki. That was the most fun for me. I really liked the timey-wimey shit. I really liked the tension of it. The actors were great. The script was great. The romance was probably the most moving one of all of the MCU, which is kind of hilarious since it was Loki falling in love with himself. But it really worked, and I really appreciated them experimenting like that. And Owen Wilson, man, what a star turn.
Anybody else have Loki at the top of their list? Kristine, where did you land?
I mean, Loki is up there, but I think my heart is still with WandaVision. It's hard because Loki is right there. I mean, the wind blows and Loki's on top and WandaVision's, second. But I think, I've always said I want my television and I want my movies to utterly destroy me. And WandaVision destroyed me. I mean, the genius of it was that it took two characters that I legit hated before the show. I did not understand their romance. I did not understand why they were a thing. I did not understand why Kevin Feige was forcing this down my throat and making it part of my life. I hated every minute of Wanda and Vision together. And then by the end of this show, I was lost in love with both of them and sobbing as the hex started to come in on them. And that finale, oh my God. I know we talked shit about the finales during this episode, but that finale is still just, that show was just so good. It broke my heart so many times and made me love two characters I legitimately loathed before the season ever started. So kudos to
Counterpoint.
Yeah.
Alligator Loki.
I know.
I mean, it's hard to say no to that.
The wind blows.
I know.
The wind blows. And then it's alligator Loki, man.
I gotta say, though, I'm with Kristine on this. I am a stan for the rest of time for WandaVision. I mean, I loved that show so much. I taught it in my gender and literature class this semester. And it was magical watching it all over again with a bunch of undergraduates who were totally there for it, right? There for the gender critique, there for the sort of critique of the domestic sphere, there for the shaking up of the American sitcom. I mean, WandaVision was great, and it was a great introduction to this sort of stable of shows because it was so formally experimental, more experimental than any of the shows that have come after it. Not that I don't love those too, but it sort of threw us in headfirst into a wild ride. And it was so fun and so smart and so thoughtful. And it also dug in on what otherwise would be maybe a kind of grim, dark thing about trauma and grief and, kind of redemption. And it wasn't that. It was actually a really thoughtful, really heartening. I mean, I'm with you, Kristine. Like I wept at the end of that. And it was moving, but it was also really poignant and funny at times. I'm gonna go with WandaVision.
And I mean, I'll go with the obvious one, which is Falcon and Winter Soldier.
No. John Walker. Jesse's got the t-shirt on right now. It just says, I love John Walker. So it's great.
If anybody answers that, I have to question. No, like you're not being honest. Again, for me, it goes back and forth between WandaVision and Loki a lot. And I almost always come down on the side of WandaVision. So sorry, I think we're 3-1 WandaVision.
I may have recency bias.
It's true. And for me, the thing that I love the most about WandaVision was that it was a show that felt like it was trying something new.
Yeah.
And so much of the MCU, the critique that the MCU will always get, and for good reason, is that there is a formula.
Mm-hmm.
You'll have an Act 1 in which you sort of have the heroic setup, and there's some sort of breakdown in the relationship. And Act 2, where the hero struggles, and then everything kind of resolves in that break by the end of Act 2. And then in Act 3, that's just fighting the bad guy, and a lot of fighting the bad guy. And they tweak it every so often, but that's largely what happens. And with WandaVision, it wasn't that. It was just something else, a different structure, and an intentional structure that worked so well. And even the minor critiques that you might have of the finale, and I think the one big critique, which is that, and we've talked about this and we'll always talk about this, but she enslaved a bunch of people and just seemed to have gotten away with it.
Like Clint with Ronin, Jesse, like Clint with Ronin.
Exactly.
But come on, how are you going to hold accountable the Scarlet Witch? How does one do that?
I mean, fair.
Yeah,
I mean, that's true.
Omnipotent.
It's a flex. That whole walk out of the town was a major flex. I still have no problem with that whatsoever.
Oh my God.
I have big problems with Ronin because he's just a man. But like Scarlet Witch, I'm not trying to put cuffs on her. No, thank you.
Well, Kristine is not getting invited to Westview anytime soon.
Sorry, Westview. You're on your own.
What both shows have strongly in common is they have shapeshifters in them, Vision, Loki, and the sexual possibilities are endless. So thank you, MCU, for that.
No judgment here.
I also land on Loki because I have to say WandaVision walked back a couple of its most inventive possibilities, and whereas Loki just kept doubling down on the wild choices. You know, I'm just not. I didn't care whether it was really Quicksilver, but the fact that he was just Ralph Boner was just the limpest ending.
Great name.
We lost all the Darcy storylines, which I understand were partly for COVID reasons, but it's still the show is the show. Whereas with Loki, they kept taking Loki and Sylvie to new and strange places. I've never seen a relationship like that on screen. And on top of that, the development of Kang as a major villain in the MCU is something none of the other shows have had the scope and scale to do. So for me, Loki was the most fun and will matter the most of all of the shows. And so I kind of landed there. But I have one other question since I got this group together and Jesse and Kristine had no idea this was happening. So this is my little scheme of the day. I do want to know if each of you has a hope as we head into 2022 for what you want to see from Marvel Television. And since Jesse and Kristine didn't even know this was coming, I'll let them think for a second. Maeve, let's start with you. Do you have a hope as we head into 2022 for Marvel TV?
This year has given me all kinds of reasons to hope. Maybe because like the MCU is the one thing I feel like I can count on. Like COVID just keeps sticking around, and the MCU is like actually producing something that I want to pay attention to. But I'm excited about many of the shows that are coming out. But one thing that I'm excited about that Hawkeye has made me excited about is that we know we're getting an Echo show, and I love Echo as a character. And one thing that we saw in Hawkeye is that the writers are really leaning in to her different abilities, right? Leaning into her deafness, creating kind of a sort of sonic environment for the viewer that helps kind of duplicate what she's experiencing. And because one of the things that I've loved about the shows so far this year has been that formal experimentation, whether it's WandaVision and it's, experimenting with the American sitcom, or it's Loki experimenting with the Soviet dystopia, I think that there could be something really interesting. They could get some real mileage out of experimenting with the audience experience of a person who is differently abled. And I think that's something I'm excited to see. I'm excited to see how they play that out, how they build on what they did in Hawkeye. And I hope they do something interesting with it. I mean, I have a lot of faith because they've done interesting things with all of these shows. So that's probably my big one.
Amanda, what do you have for us?
Well, we know that Ms. Marvel and She-Hulk are in the pipeline, and I am so incredibly excited for both of those because those are two of my favorite comic series in the Marvel universe. I love the Dan Slott She-Hulk. I love Ms. Marvel from the very beginning. She's one of the most fun new characters that has been introduced in the past decade or so. And I think, there was a lot of heavy stuff with Falcon and the Winter Soldier and WandaVision and to an extent Loki. I think Hawkeye kind of gave us a reminder of like how the MCU does kind of light comedy pretty well. Both She-Hulk and Ms. Marvel are light comic superhero stories. So I'm really looking forward to some laughs. I'm looking forward to the kind of more sitcom-y format. Just great characters. I know a lot of people are into the MCU, haven't read the comics, so they don't know much about She-Hulk besides that she's Lady Hulk. And they probably don't know anything about Ms. Marvel at all. So it's going to be really fun for people to meet these characters. If they're anything like they are in the comic books, they're going to love them.
Jesse, what about you? Hope for 2022?
More Wong, just everywhere.
Are you unsatisfied with the amount of Wong you've presently gotten, which I feel like is pretty solid amount of Wong?
I mean, I could always use more. Like, even in, if he sticks around, like, he's got a plan. And if not, then Doctor Strange is probably about to fuck something up. And I don't know, just there's little bits like that, like little forms of character development that, because the MCU is kind of this long form serialized storytelling, not only are you kind of rewarded for following along, but in another more important way, I think we're given these small stories that add so much richness to the overall texture. And we're going to get, over the next 5 years of MCU stories, we're going to get the galaxy spanning stuff. We're going to get, things being consumed or destroyed, and the universe is going to be in peril 500 times. But I just want to see more of those small relationships and characters being developed. Because, again, and we've talked about this with Hawkeye, the thing that I liked the most about Hawkeye was all of the relationships that were being developed along the way, and the sense that, we could watch and talk about them and get 3 completely different reads on what those relationships meant, based both on our own personal experiences and also just the little things we picked up on in conversation. It's that kind of writing and that kind of development that I'm really looking forward to seeing, and maybe even more so than getting, the full Kang quantum verse multiverse issue coming up. Like, even in Multiverse of Madness, the thing that I liked most about the trailer, which actually I think was officially released today, so it's no longer a spoiler. Yeah. But we're going to see what looks like Doctor Strange Supreme meet Doctor Strange original recipe. And I'm really looking forward to those two characters playing off of each other. Even if the whole multiverse thing doesn't execute the way that I hope it does, but it seems like with Spider-Man it will. But even if it doesn't, just getting those kind of moments, getting those kind of sort of rewarding built-up character experiences, that's what I'm looking for.
I mean, we're going to get Wanda in there, so why not Wong? Like, feels
we'll
like...
definitely get
Wong will definitely be in there.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, there's a lot. The interplay is strong there. Kristine, do you have a hope for 2022?
Oh, I have so many hopes for 2022. I mean, first of all, will Bucky get with Sarah? I need to find that out. And how does Sam feel about it? So that's number one. Number two, I need Loki season 2 injected into my veins right now. Like, as much as I was like, oh, WandaVision, it's so great. Loki's close, number 2. I need Loki season 2 like I need oxygen. I am ready. I am so ready for that. And let me tell you, the 2 words that I am most excited about coming up, Pedro Pascal.
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
Let me tell y'all right now, when that show airs, the Marvelous TV Club is going to get really thirsty. Okay? There's going to be a lot more thirst segments when that show airs. So I cannot wait for Pedro Pascal's debut in the
We might have to work that in as like a formal segment of the podcast, the thirst segment.
Oh, don't worry about it. Mark knows I will make this happen.
It's going to happen.
Oh, yeah. No, for sure. Kristine is definitely the best person to talk to on all things thirst related. I'm going to go with small stories. I'm really hoping that with Ms. Marvel and She-Hulk and some of these other things that they balance their slate of cosmic, galactic whatevers with stories that stay small. Because I think, as we've talked about on the Hawkeye finale, they had all the best moments of this show are just like Kate and Yelena on opposite sides of the table from each other and those kinds of things. And when Jesse and I would get weird with all the different possibilities of the MCU, I feel like small stories allow you to explore these little corners of the universe and dig way in to those where there's a rich, vein to mine of ideas and creative possibilities that are not, kind of drowning under the weight of everything that came before and is also going to come after. So I think that's my hope, is that these TV shows, the more of them that they do, maybe the less in some ways that they all have to lead directly into each other. And the more that a few of them can just kind of be these ancillary nodes that have fun and all of that. So that's kind of my hope for 2022. Well, look, we still have more Hawkeye to talk about. We'll probably move into some rapid fire mode so folks can get some rest. But Amanda, Maeve, thank you so much for joining us out of nowhere at the last second to talk a little MTVC.
That was fun, guys.
That
What
was
a great
fun.
little
So
surprise.
good to see you.
Yeah.
It's good
Happy
seeing you
holidays,
guys.
everybody.
I miss you.
I miss
Happy
you too.
holidays. That was so lovely.
I know.
All right, well, that was awesome. Thank you guys for rolling with my little surprise. Let's return now from our multiversal exploration, the crossover event of all MTVCers coming back, and we'll finish up our conversation of these main characters in Hawkeye. We got to talk about Yelena Belova. Jesse, her character journey, what did you like most about it, and what was there, if anything, that you would change or didn't like?
Yelena is as close as we're going to get to Loki without Tom Hiddleston appearing on the show.
What do you mean by that?
She's
She
perfection.
Yes. She's just a little perfect trickster. Like, everything about her character is just like, I'm going to show up when it makes you uncomfortable. I'm going to exploit that uncomfortableness, but I'm also going to make you love me. Like, she's sitting there in your apartment and Kate points it out in this episode, like, don't make me like you. But everything about her, you're like, I do. Like, you're trying to kill me right now, and I still truly like you. The thing that didn't work is I still never quite got why she believed Clint killed Natasha. Based on everything she should know about Clint, based on everything about their relationship, and based on the circumstances of Natasha's death, I just never quite got the connection of why she bought into it so firmly. And the fact that it's just the Contessa showing up at Nat's graveside at the end of Black Widow and saying, I know who killed your sister. It was Clint Barton. Without more, I just never quite understood why she bought that, especially for somebody who is distrusting, who is savvy, and who does pride herself on knowing more than everybody else in any situation so that she's prepared.
The way I took that was that Yelena Well, one, I think she actually did show herself in Black Widow to be somewhat impressionable, and maybe someone who is still young and naive about the world because she lived her life as a brainwashed assassin and doesn't really necessarily have the tools to navigate all of her own feelings, which is why I think the whole time she was saying to herself she wanted to kill Clint Barton, the way I took that was like she really just needed to talk to Clint Barton, and she has no tools to just like figure out how to approach that relationship in a normal way. And so being able to confront him, and she admitted in this episode that she was functionally really jealous that he got the relationship that she never got with her own sister. And so I can see how that got twisted in her mind. And, I still maintain that she had a million ways she could have killed Clint if she'd really wanted to kill him without ever talking to him. But all she really wanted to do was have that conversation. She just had no way to process it. But maybe I'm giving those writers too much credit. I don't know.
No, I agree with that. She had the drop on Clint so many times and the drop on Kate so many times. It was clear, I thought, from the way the action played out, that the story being told was she wasn't quite sure about how strongly she believed it.
I think she was mourning all of this. I mean, from beginning to end, this is a woman in mourning, in deep mourning, and she needed someone to blame for her sister's death. She wasn't there. She had no idea it had happened when it happened because she dusted like half of the universe. And I think she's still processing. It's only been a few months, I believe, since everybody came back. So she's still processing, and blame is such an easy thing to cling on to when you're mourning. And a person like that, if she blames you, she wants to just beat the shit out of you. I'm sure she was more than happy to accept the assignment to kill the man she thought played a role in her sister's death and let all of that sorrow out on Clint's face and the rest of his body. That's what that was. It's her processing. It's her grieving. But I agree with you that there was a part of her that was like, I need to know more. And that was part of why she was holding back. That's why that shot through the window actually didn't meet its target, when we know that she's the brilliant child assassin, right? From Black Widow, that there's no way that Yelena would have missed that shot because she's taken it a million times before. There's a reason why she missed. And there's a part of her that, just wanted to hear from Clint what the hell happened on Vormir, because he's the only person in the entire universe who could actually tell her. But and I think Florence Pugh is perfection in everything that she does, so I don't have a critique here. The only one I might have is that I wish we had more time with Yelena.
That goes to what I think we might be looking at in a Hawkeye season 2, because we heard all about Hawkeye and Black Widow being best friends in the Clint Barton and Tasha Romanoff era, but we never really got to see it except just, words in Avengers movies. But with these two, the chemistry is off the charts, and I don't see why season 2 isn't Hawkeye and the Black Widow, just like, Falcon and the Winter Soldier was a team-up show. So that's kind of what I'm hoping for from that. So that's another 2022 hope, I guess I have. Give me Hawkeye and the Black Widow, because that would be, I think, a really fun pairing of characters and actors and adventurers. I don't know. Plus, it would take Yelena out of the dark side a little bit, which I'm still worried she's working for the Contessa, even though she had a little bit of a growth moment here at the end of this. And I don't know. I just want good things for Yelena, probably because, like you said, Florence Pugh is basically perfection as a performer. So let's talk about one more character that I think we count as a major character, considering the import she had on the episodes, and especially this finale. Eleanor Bishop. Kristine, what did you like about her journey, and what did you not like, or would you change, if anything?
Well, actually, I wanted to yield my time to the two of you, because I listened to the episode that y'all had where y'all utterly trashed this woman as a mother. I believe one person said, I don't even think Eleanor likes her daughter. Maybe she loves her, but I don't think she likes her. This woman drove her car into Kingpin in order to save her child, took on Kingpin because she was like, this shit is getting too close to my daughter. So I would like to hear what y'all have to say about Eleanor Bishop, and maybe if you'd like to retract any past statements that you might have made.
I would like to retract my past statements and replace them with stronger statements in support of my prior position. Eleanor Bishop is a shitty mom who almost certainly has narcissistic personality disorder, who put her daughter at risk. For what we could tell, is basically because her husband ran up a bunch of debts, and so she needed to maintain her lifestyle. And she got in way too deep, and she started exploiting and using the people around her. She thought she could keep it together. She couldn't. And yes, she did have the moment where she tried to protect her daughter. But at the same time, that was 12 years ago, or whenever she first got hooked up with Kingpin. That's when she should have thought about it. And there was no problem until her daughter started achieving her dreams, met an Avenger, became friends with him, became a partner with him, and it's starting to threaten her business and her secrets that Eleanor got all, I'm a good mom now. I need to go stop the murderous kingpin of crime from targeting my daughter's friend because she might figure out what's going on. She might figure out that it's me. It might hurt my relationship, which I view in a certain way in which I control. So Eleanor Bishop, have fun in jail.
I'm also gonna double down here. Here's what's up. Bare minimum of motherhood is stopping someone from killing your kid because of your mistakes. So that doesn't win her any Mother of the Year awards, that she decided to finally throw in the towel with Kingpin because, oh shit, I've made so many mistakes that now my daughter has a target on her back. Not winning any awards for that. On top of that, Kristine, I love the relationship you described with your mom and how you would engage on these things, but Eleanor doesn't do any of that. Eleanor is not sharing any of her real life with Kate, and her unwillingness to open up in any way about what's going on is why they're in this situation. She totally could have brought Kate along for the ride of this sort of extra legal gray area bullshit. Kate totally has it in her to become someone who would do all kinds of extra or illegal shit as part of like the family business if Eleanor had brought her along on that journey. She didn't do that. On top of that, Eleanor raised a kid that y'all were basically, kind of talking about as like this rich kid who, doesn't really know how to deal with consequences and stuff like that. And I think that's also on Eleanor. So I think she did a bad job raising her kid. She did a bad job communicating with her kid, and she gets no extra credit from me for just not letting Kingpin kill her. I rest my case.
Well done, boys. Well done.
I mean, I guess, did we just change your opinion about Eleanor at all? Or do you still feel like she's your kind of mom?
No, I honestly didn't have like a very strong opinion on Eleanor. I kind of thought that she was an okay baddie. And just honestly, I didn't want to talk about Eleanor. By the end, I found her a little boring because I thought that there could have been so much more there. But the way you guys summed her up is pretty pathetic.
It's true. Yeah. Although we have to give her some points for Jack actually being kind of fun.
Yeah, Jack's cute.
Though she did throw him under the bus too.
But by the end, she has no agency over anything. She's enthralled to Kingpin. And on the other hand, we have Yelena's recording. So either way, she is screwed. And this idea, the last bit, the two moments in the episode, she tried to take some control, where she told Wilson Fisk that I have insurance. I've kept records of everything we've done. And he's like, that I'll just come after you and kill you, right? Like you can't outplay the Kingpin. And then when she drives him through the wall, but both times she's coming after someone who is stronger, who is smarter, and who has the control. And both times all she does is slightly delay the bad thing from happening. And ultimately it's still left up to Kate to deal with this on her own, to deal with the situation her mom put her in.
Yeah, well, this is fun. I actually really enjoyed talking about Eleanor. And, you call her a boring character, but I think that was our spiciest conversation. So Eleanor's...
It was cathartic.
Yeah, I really needed to get that off my chest. All right, we've got one more section. We're going to go rapid fire a little bit here. Let's take stock of these supporting characters, though, before we go, because we did meet a lot of people in this series. So I want to start with you, Kristine. Is the Kingpin dead? Yes or no? What do you think?
He deserves to be because of that shirt. Who the fuck wears a Hawaiian shirt on Christmas Eve in New York City? He should be dead.
Well, I'll tell you this. There's a comic arc that Jesse was talking about with Daredevil where Maya shoots him and temporarily blinds him in the comics. And in fact, I believe he's wearing that shirt in the comics when he has like a bionic eye after that whole thing went down. So I think not only is Kingpin not dead, but he's going to be blinded in a show, in the Echo show, which will be a sort of, conversation about blindness and deafness and these other issues. And I don't know if that will be handled deftly or not, but we'll see, because I think that's where they're going with it. Jesse, do you have any thoughts on that?
No, I did not see a body being held in somebody's arms as they cried to the heavens. That's the only visual language that makes somebody dead in the MCU. Or you fall into the pit in Vormir. So he's 100% alive.
Jesse, were you satisfied with the reveal of Laura Barton as Agent 19?
No. It was a thing that happened. And I mean, I'm glad it gave her character something to do. I'll say I was satisfied with the fact that she is more than just the farm wife that Clint may or may not have kidnapped at some point. And
right.
But again, it's bringing up this issue that she at one point did stuff and now appears to just be the wife on the phone. And maybe that's exactly what she wanted, but we still don't know anything about her background and we don't have any real explanation of what Agent 19 meant beyond that.
Yeah, Agent 19 in the comics is another name for Bobby Morris, who is Mockingbird, who is Clint Barton's wife in the comics. So while I don't think that, this makes any clearer whether or not Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. is canon, because they're just clearly saying that this Laura character is playing the role that Bobby Morse did. I don't know. It made that whole thing messier for me too. Kristine, were you satisfied with the reveal of Laura?
Yeah, because first of all, let me just say to Jesse, she's not just the wife at home. She is the woman in the chair. Okay.
Yeah.
So
yes.
She's doing stuff. She's technical support, man. So she's out there, but I liked it because her being a S.H.I.E.L.D. agent now makes their relationship make more sense to me. Because honestly, once she and the family showed up, I was just like, how the hell did Clint have time to date? Where did that come from? In his line of work, he really doesn't have time to meet people and be nice and all. She was a friend from work. Now it makes sense.
Yeah. Now I need her to be the woman in the chair for the Kate and Yelena show. That would just be a really satisfying season 2 for me. Let's do it. Kristine, is Kazi the least effective, most pathetic villain in MCU history?
I don't even think he rises to the level of villain. He's that pathetic.
Yeah, he fucked up the watch heist, right? That's an F. He failed to hold Clint or Kate when they had them captured. That's an F. Clint got the drop on him not once, but twice in the truck and on the billboard. He hit absolutely no one with a sniper rifle in that party scene this episode where he had all day. He couldn't get a promotion after 5 years of being in the same job. And he's too chicken shit to run away with the girl of his dreams.
Yeah, I mean, he sucked. He was like Iron Man 2 levels of bad villain.
I definitely don't know what they were thinking with him. And I actually feel bad for that actor because obviously, all the Jon Snow dunks were pretty funny. His character does nothing at all. And I think, it was just it's a real L across the board for that guy. Jesse, the Tracksuit Bros suffered a lot of complicated Arrow disasters in this finale. Which Tracksuit Bro suffered the worst fate in the big fight?
I think the obvious answer is the Pym Particle Bros, because they're about to be an owl pellet. They might be dissected by some 8th graders pretty soon.
Oh, no.
So that's the one I'll go with.
Kristine, did you have an opinion on the Tracksuit Bros Arrow disasters?
Yeah, I was just like, what happened to the guy who got hit by the drone arrow? Did it drop him? Did it run out of juice and he fell? Did it just keep going up? What happened to that guy? I definitely had the Pym Shrunken Van on my list, but the drone guy, we don't even know what happened to him.
I'm on team frozen leg guy. Had it really bad. That leg is coming off, and painfully. That's frostbite and probably just going to crack and break off. And I feel like that is a tough way to go. It's hard to argue with the owl dudes because getting eaten by an owl probably not what those guys thought was going to happen to them when they woke up that morning. But the leg thing is just, I think it was an underrated pain point, I guess is what I'm saying. That was, they did a lot of damage to a lot of people in that finale. But I guess like Ronin, there's just no consequences.
Why would there be?
Jesse, I'm going to start with our very final question of this series, of this whole year of the MTVC for 2021. Our final question, Jesse, is Hawkeye still your least favorite Avenger?
My silence is me thinking about this. I'm actually going through the list of Avengers. Here's the thing I'll say. I don't know if he's my least favorite Avenger, but I no longer actively dislike him.
Well, that's progress. Does that mean there's somebody that you still actively dislike then? Because that will answer that question.
Not that I can think of offhand. Star-Lord doesn't count as an Avenger. Yeah, like there's not an Avenger I can think of right now that actively frustrates or annoys me. So I think Hawkeye is just kind of there. He's like on that level of Avenger where like, I accept him. He's part of the team. I get it now. And I don't find it as frustrating. There's still the underlying issue of the fact that he is a mass murderer. And sort of the way that the Avengers have always approached their role in tragedy is to have these like debates over who's supposed to do what, how are we supposed to respond to this, what is our role and responsibility in the world. Whereas Hawkeye is just like, well, I got away with it. Peace out. Back to my farmhouse.
Yeah. Okay. Well, that sounds like some kind of growth and progress in your relationship with Hawkeye, which, I'm sure he'll sleep more soundly knowing that. Kristine, what about you? Is Hawkeye still your least favorite Avenger?
I'm sorry to lawyer this question, but who are we counting as Avengers?
I think you get to make some of those calls yourself at the end of the day. I think it's a pretty blurry line in the MCU, so I think it's up to you.
If we're talking OG Avengers, yes, still least favorite. If we're talking about like anyone who fought Thanos at the end of Endgame, then no, I hate Star-Lord. He's definitely at the bottom. I'm not sure if there's anyone that I dislike more than Star-Lord out of everyone in the MCU.
And actually, so there's an official team roster I found. This is from Wikipedia, so take it as you will.
If it's on Wikipedia.
I know. So, Kristine, Iron Man, Hulk, Thor, Captain America, Black Widow, Hawkeye, War Machine, Scarlet Witch, Vision, Falcon, Spider-Man, Rocket, Nebula, Captain Marvel, and Ant-Man.
Interesting. So folks who survived the blip and worked together. Interesting.
So they're counting that like post-blip.
Except Spider-Man.
Police of the universe. Yeah.
Because he fought in Civil War, so I feel like that makes sense. And Tony dubbed him an Avenger, so... Okay. So then, all right, so if Star-Lord's off the list, War Machine, I might actually, I don't know, the two of them are kind of, it's a hair between the two of them, because I'm like, Rhodey's a cop.
Yeah.
Sorry. So yeah, maybe Rhodey's my least favorite. There we go.
Yeah. Captain Marvel for me is now the bottom of the list. There's nothing there for me. I don't connect with the character that much. The movie was okay. I didn't hate it like a lot of people. I think at this point now, until we get more from her, I think she's kind of at the bottom. I kind of also had Doctor Strange there. I'm surprised he doesn't count, considering he kind of manufactured the entire Endgame scenario, but because he's super boorish, mistake prone, and a bad dresser. But if I got to go off of Jesse's list, What? You like Doctor Strange?
No, Mark, I just feel like you and I need to have a separate conversation about this and unpack you not liking Carol Danvers or Doctor Strange. Like this sounds like you need therapy, and I am happy to be your therapist in this situation because you're just wrong.
I don't feel a type of way about Carol. I feel cold towards Carol. I don't feel anything other than, it's like I just feel like she's kind of Superman, which is like my least favorite superhero design type of character. So,
But wait a second. But I did not hear Tony Stark on your list of people you don't like. Doctor Strange is basically Tony Stark, and Tony Stark is basically Doctor Strange. So why is Doctor Strange on your list and not Tony Stark? This is why I feel like you and I need to have a whole separate episode unpacking this statement of yours.
Okay. Yeah. I mean, I'm always happy to do public therapy when it comes to the MCU. I guess what I would say off the top of my head is, again, I just come down to Doctor Strange's outfits and maybe Benedict Cumberbatch's really bad American accent.
It's petty.
I agree.
It's petty. I support it. I support it because you're being petty right now. I support it.
Okay. But I think I'm willing to entertain the argument that I like Clint more than Tony. I definitely got in trouble on the internet about 4 years ago for saying Tony Stark's a real piece of shit and an abusive bully, especially to Peter Parker. And people did not like that. So maybe I do also hate Tony Stark and I just need to fully process that. But look, I'm open to having my mind changed on Carol. Do you have any final thoughts that before I let you guys go as to why I should reconsider my Carol Danvers position?
She's awesome. She's an amazing role model to girls everywhere. She
true.
literally destroyed an entire spaceship by herself. She's like a walking, talking MacGuffin, basically.
And that's a good thing. You like
awesome.
Into that?
Yeah.
I'm into it because she's a human who could like fly through space and do all types of incredible things. Like, go do real superhero shit. Like, she's the closest thing we have to Thor, and she's human. Like, it's her humanness and her rediscovery of that, I think was really amazing in her movie. Like, she thought she was Creole this time, and then she's like, well, you know what? Actually, it's my humanity that makes me awesome. And I thought that was great.
Jesse, do you want to break our tie on the place I never thought we would land on this final episode, which is Carol Danvers cool or not?
Yeah. I sadly lean more towards Mark than Kristine.
Why sadly? Why is that sad? What does that say?
Because he knows the trouble that he will be in for the rest of his life for making this choice.
So can I give another thing I'm looking forward to in 2022?
No, you made your bed.
No, which is Miss Marvel giving us more about Captain Marvel to like clamp down on as a character. Because again, the thing with Carol Danvers has been in her movie, we didn't actually get to know her at all because she was brainwashed the entire time. So we never got a real sense of her personality until the very end. In Endgame, she's just insanely powerful and shows up when somebody needs to be beaten down. So I just want to see more of her as a person. And right now, I just don't have that to grasp onto with her as a character.
Yeah, that's kind of walking the middle line there.
See?
Yeah, good job.
I feel like y'all need to watch the movie again.
I'm open to that.
She definitely has personality. Part of it is annoying. Like, part of her personality is annoying, but she definitely demonstrates personality. Like, to me, it's wild that y'all could like Kate Bishop.
Oh, love Kate Bishop.
And not like Carol Danvers. Because to me, Kate Bishop is way more annoying than Carol Danvers.
But she's way more human than Carol Danvers.
But I also went to school for 6 years with like, the type of privileged girl that Kate is. So I have like a little bias here in preferring Carol over Kate. But to me, the two of them are cut from the same cloth for the most part, personality-wise.
Fascinating. See, this is what Character Cast is all about, digging into all these different opinions and stuff. I love it so much. I want to thank you both so much for, like I said when we had the whole group, just, going on this wild ride on this podcast. You have so much insight and creativity and entertainment to bring everyone, and I really appreciate doing this show with you guys as we wrap up on this holiday season.
Well, I've loved doing this, and I'm looking forward to the next show and shows and movies and everything else that comes along.
Yeah, I love doing this project with you guys. So very much looking forward to 2022. You guys have been the bright spot of my 2021. So nothing but good things ahead, I'm sure.
Right back at you. Right back at you. And on that note, Kristine, where can people find and follow you if they want to talk more MCU and how much I'm a fool on Carol Danvers?
Yes, guys, come with me with all the takes on how wrong Jesse and Mark are. You can find me on Twitter and Instagram at KippensK.
And Jesse, where can people find and follow you if they want to clown us for our Carol Danvers takes?
Jesse L. Taylor, Jesse, on Twitter.
Okay, legendary listeners, that is our show for today, and it's our season. So thank you so much for slinging some arrows with us, for doing some phasing through walls, for going back in time to the 50s sitcoms, for all the weird John Walker shit that we don't really think about anymore.
Fuck that
for
guy.
Loki falling in love with himself, and for me completely rooting for that. I don't know. I don't know when the next MCU show is. I don't know which show it is because they pushed Ms. Marvel back. So I'm betting it's She-Hulk. I don't know. Anyway, we will be back for more MCU shenanigans then, and maybe with some Kristine therapy for me before then. But in the meantime, we hope you have a wonderful holiday season and that you stay safe out there. If you are enjoying our show, please leave us a 5-star Apple review so we can rise in those search rankings, especially between these shows. That really helps us out. And if you want to talk with me some more, you can join me at the Marvelous TV Club Facebook page, Twitter page, Instagram page, all at Marvelous TV Club, or follow me on Twitter at Marc Faletti. That's Mark with a C, F as in Frank, Aletti. All right, team, let's go write that Yelena and Kate team-up series, yeah?